Sometimes when you read or hear a story, it does not make sense until you get to the end of the story. Matthew's story of Jesus ends with a major surprise and a postlude about how the world has chosen to deal with it. First, the surprise. Borrowing from the language of Charles Dickens, Jesus was dead. There was no doubt about that. The women, of course, had been there when they took his body off that cross and laid it in the tomb. So they also knew that Jesus was very, very dead. But they had an advantage in this situation that his disciples did not. They were invisible in a society that pretty much ignored them. Therefore, unlike the disciples, they could leave their hiding place for a while and go to the tomb, go where the disciples did not dare show their face. Matthew says only that the women were going there to look at the tomb. We all do that. When something as shocking as death, the death of someone we love, has happened, we have to keep reminding ourselves that it is real. Going to the graveside is more than just grief. It is therapy. By this means, we go from denial to a confrontation with the truth, so that hopefully one day we will also be able to accept the change that has occurred in our life. Then maybe we can go from that empty, hopeless feeling within us to some kind of new reality, one that will always be touched with sorrow, of course, but also able somehow, almost miraculously, to function once again within the real world. I think they were doing that. They were struggling to find a way to deal with what had happened and to somehow figure out what they should do now. As they approached the place where the tomb was that morning, there was an earthquake. The ground beneath them shifted, literally as well as figuratively. We are tempted to think that this was when the resurrection happened, when the ground shook. But it's far more likely that the resurrection had already happened. What took place that morning was just about letting these women and the world know all about that. The stone was rolled back so that they could all see that the body of Jesus was no longer there. The guards at the tomb might have been a little shaken up by the earthquake, but what terrified them was the sudden appearance of an angel coming down from heaven. And then the angel moved back the stone as if it were nothing at all. If the women had arrived just a little earlier, no doubt they would have just been turned away and later told the disciples to stay away as well, because there were soldiers guarding the tomb. Now, however, they had quite a different story to share with them. The angel said to the women, "Do not be afraid, for I know that you are looking for Jesus who was crucified. He is not here. He has risen." This was now the first day of a new reality for them and for the world as well. Soon everybody was going to have to learn how to cope with that. We are told that the women were afraid, but that they were also filled with joy, and they were already on their way to share what had happened with the disciples when Jesus himself appeared to them. "Greetings," he said. They came to him, clasped his feet, and worshiped him, proving that he was quite real and not some kind of apparition. Then Jesus said to them, "Do not be afraid. Go and tell my brothers to go to Galilee. There they will see me." Reality check. Jesus died. There was no doubt about that. But Jesus was alive now, and somehow even more real. And there was no doubt about that either. Martin Luther King once said in a speech on Easter Day in 1957, "Easter is a day above all days. It surpasses the mystery and marvel of Christmas with all of the glory of the incarnation. It asserts that man's extremity is God's opportunity. It affirms that what stops us does not stop God, and that miracle is as much a part of the end as of the beginning." Martin Luther King later added that one can discover meaning in this life through the resurrection of Jesus Christ. and all of the disappointments of life can be transformed into meaningful experiences. If you will just wait, Easter will come. The crucifixion was not the last act in the great and powerful drama. Thank God a third day came, unquote. And thank God indeed. And now for the postlude. How does the world come to grips with this and face this new reality? The answer apparently is that you either believe it or you try to deny it ever happened. For some, the resurrection of Jesus has been for them the beginning of a new life in which the power to love has overcome that instinct within us to hate. For some, the fear of death, which terrifies even the bravest of men, has now been replaced with confidence that God will always have the last word, even in death. This day you will be with me in paradise, Jesus told another dying man upon a cross. And up until Easter morning, we could have maintained that he was mocking a dying man. Now we must take Jesus at his word. Jesus holds the keys to paradise, and Jesus is the way, the truth, and the light. And therefore, one day, where he is, we shall be also. The resurrection has proved, beyond all doubt for many of us, that there are forces at work even in this life that go beyond all of our understanding. Therefore, we can align ourselves with this reality and live in such a way that we will not be ashamed to have lived at all. We need no longer waste this life because God has given us the words of life and the tools we need to invest our life in what really matters instead of what will perish. Faith in Christ has always been more than just a means to an end. It is the catalyst for our own resurrection, in which we too can go from death to life. Before Easter morning, we could live life like some other people do, just preparing to die. Now we are able to say, as Paul did, that death doesn't really change anything anymore. As Paul once said, whether we live or die, we belong to the Lord. For this very reason, Christ died and returned to life, so that he might be the Lord of both the dead and the living. For all of us now, there will be a third day. Some of us will know the joy that those women experienced at the feet of Jesus, because in fact, this is already our reality now. Jesus lives, and so we can too, bravely, and with confidence in the love of God for us every day. Others, I fear, are going to be surprised in the end, and they may not be so lucky. The story in Matthew, in fact, ends with a bit of a downer, because we see there the beginning of a lie that has persisted even to this day, that there was no resurrection. His disciples came during the night and stole him away while we were asleep. So the chief priests and elders told the Roman guards to say to anyone who asked them. Really? Do you really think the disciples had that sort of courage? If so, then you don't know them as well as I do. Or do you really think that the Roman guards were prone to fall asleep while on watch, a crime punishable by death? I doubt that very seriously. However, in one form or another, the lie has persisted that Jesus died and stayed dead. Those who say that are clearly wrong, and they are not good historians either. There were some other charismatic leaders who died. You do not hear their names anymore. Sometimes a movement they began did continue for a while after they were gone, but nobody ever said that they came back from the dead. I doubt that any sort of belief in Jesus Christ would have ever survived the death of Jesus either, without the reality of Easter morning. The Christian church exists now only because Jesus lives, not because he died. The ending rewrote the whole meaning of the story for us. Everything Jesus spoke has now become meaningful, and we know it to be true because Jesus was and is alive. The women on Easter morning were only the first to witness this new reality in which we live. And now we are only the latest ones to share the same truth that they experienced. Like the women who came to the tomb that morning, we now also have a story we can tell others. He has risen from the dead, and he is Lord. Be safe, and God bless you.